Hey, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for coming here today. It is my pleasure to introduce Brian Wansink, the director of the Food and Brand Lab at Cornell University. The title of this talk tonight is Beating Mindless Eating, something I think we can all relate to. Brian has completed his PhD at Stanford University. He has focused his entire career on the psychology behind what people eat and how often they eat. And his focus is to help people eat more nutritiously and control what they eat. So Brian's book, Mindless Eating, that was recently out, put him into the spotlight. And he has been featured on all the news networks, BBC News, Learning Channel, the front pages of Wall Street Journal, and New York Times. On a personal level, Brian is an Iowan. He was born in Sioux City. He was very glad to accept our offer to invitation to come here, and we're really happy to have him here. Also, at the end of the talk, there are going to be questions and answers. There's a book signing. Also, there's some refreshments, so please stick around, and Brian will be happy to chat with you. So, Brian, thank you for coming, and we look forward to your talk. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for all of you to take part of your Thursday night to spend it learning about mindless eating. So I had the opportunity yesterday. I was given a talk to the medical school at the University of Iowa. And I talked to my 85-year-old dad who's in Sioux City, and he goes, "So where are you now?" I go, "Dad, I'm in Iowa City." He goes, "That's out there past Des Moines." Okay, yeah. And that was true. We're going to talk about beating mindless eating. Now, how many here have ever seen these charts, these CDC charts? Hopefully they're not new to very many people, but basically what they show is their color coding of how fat we are state by state, okay? So in 1991, you can see we've got some light states, blue and white, and you see here in Iowa we're light blue. But as the years go by, as we go from 91 up to 96, these colors get darker, meaning we're basically getting fatter, to the point where in 2003, being the overachieving country we are, we have to start inventing new colors, okay? Well, I've got some pretty cool people in my lab, and one of the econometricians, I had tried to project what would happen if obesity rates kept growing at the same rate. What would things be like in the year 2025? Now, you're going to have to look very closely at this, because it's kind of difficult. No, okay, really, I just made that up. It's totally made up. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about two myths tonight that lead us to eat a lot more and a lot worse than we really like to. I'll talk about some things that can be done immediately that you could do tonight if you wanted to. I mean, after you probably went downtown and came back from going downtown. But the third thing that I'm going to talk about that I think is really neat, I'm just going to spend about 10 minutes on this, is some really neat stuff related to schools, what we're trying to do to actually expand this across the United States in school lunchrooms. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to end with some reminders of some burning personal questions you might have. Questions like, what should you impulse buy at the Pottery Barn? How you should eat Ben & Jerry's ice cream? And what to put on your home counter, okay? So here's our lab. Our mission is to discover transforming solutions that help people eat better. And we're going to look at the first part, which is myths that make us fat. And let me show you a little video here, because we have a lab, but the lab isn't the type that you're used to seeing where there's test tubes and beakers and, crazy professors with hair and somebody with a bolt in his neck over there. It's more like a psychology lab, but it looks exactly like your home, okay? Within 3 hours, we can transform this lab to look like any room in your home, okay? Because what we do is we bring people in, and we change things, we see how it influences how much they eat, or what they choose, or how much they like the food. Now, let me give you an example here. Now, this takes us to our first myth. And I was giving a talk at the Institute of Medicine, which is in Washington, D.C., about 6 years ago. And this is a place where there's a lot of really smart people there who, for some reason, all have a British accent. Okay? I mean, they could be from Omaha, but it'd be the Omaha British accent. And I talked about the study just parenthetically after talking about some other stuff we were doing. And this guy raises his hand, he says, well, surely something as basic as the size of a bowl or plate wouldn't influence how much an intelligent, informed person eats. Okay. Now, if you look at that, that's the basic assumption that most of us have, that education solves everything. Okay. If we just give people a little bit of learning, they'll never be tricked in any other way. Well, we decided to look to see if this was the case. And at that time, I was teaching 4 MBA courses of about 60 students. And for one of these MBA course sessions, I hijacked it for 90 minutes and did nothing more than tell people that if I gave them a big bowl of Chex Mix like this, they'd take and eat a lot more than I gave them a slightly smaller bowl. Okay? So we did demonstrations, I had videos, we did role-playing, asking them how they could prevent from getting fooled by themselves. We did interpretive dancing, everything. And at the end of this 90 minutes, these were informed, intelligent people who knew what was happening. Well, so they all went home for Christmas, came back 6 weeks later, and invited them to a Super Bowl party at a sports bar. It's a chain. It's called Jillian's. And anybody familiar with Jillian's? Some? Well, they came to the sports bar. We led them to one of 2 different rooms. And the rooms were identical, except that one room had bowls of Chex Mix that were about this big. The other one had bowls of Chex Mix that were just about this big. Now what happened was that when people actually walked into this, they'd serve themselves a Chex Mix, they'd kind of walk down to the end of the table, they'd be intercepted by one of the researchers who'd say, hey, can you just write down the score that you think is going to be for the Super Bowl game, because we're going to then have a little lottery. And people go, oh yeah, I can do that, but I need to put this by snacks down somewhere. Well, the only place they could possibly put it was on the end of the table that we'd cleared off. But under that part of the table, there's a scale. So once they put down their plate of Chex Mix, it showed exactly how much they'd taken in the other room. Okay. Now the thing is, the typical person ended up taking and eating about 53% more Chex Mix if you had the big bowls. But what do you suppose happened at the end of the night when they left and we said, hey, you took about 50% more than the people in the other room. Do you think the size of the bowl had anything to do with it? What do you think people said? No. We said, well, why do you think this happened? And the thing is, people are intelligent, and there's something called the intelligence trap, which means we can basically rationalize anything we want to do to make ourselves right. Okay? So people would always come up with excuses. They'd say things like, yeah, well, the reason I took so much more was I didn't eat breakfast on Tuesday. It's ridiculous things. Now, the thing is, if this only happened, they took maybe about 205 calories more. If this only happened once a year, 205 calories means nothing, okay? But if the cues around us, whether it be serving bowls or whatever, cause us to overeat every day of the year, if you're surrounded by those and don't do anything about it, you'll end up weighing, just if you mathematically add up all those calories, about 18 pounds more in a year than you weigh right today. Okay? Well, we decided to look at this in another context. So let me ask you guys something. Just answer yourself. Think of the last time that you really overate. Like you overate to the point where you kind of regretted it a little bit later. Okay? Because you got to think of a specific time, okay? How many people cannot think of the last time they overate? Okay. Okay, that's like 0.001%. That's about average. Well, now, if you think of that occasion, I mean, you should know how much to eat. I mean, we should all know how much to eat. We should be well calibrated because we eat 1,000 meals a year. But what was it about that last meal that caused you to eat so much? Just see if you can think for a second. What was it that caused you to eat so much? Now, if typical, about 11 or 12% of you would say that the last time you overate was some mood-related issue. You know, like you had a tough day at school, or you're a little bit bored, or you're really happy. But some mood that led you to kind of eat a little bit differently. Now, about 50% of you would say, no, the last time I overate was because I was really, really hungry. Okay, and then about the rest of you, about 38, 37% of you would say, no, the last time I overate is because of the food. The food was really, really good. So we decided to figure out what would happen if we were to take people who weren't hungry and give them food that wasn't any good. What would happen? Well, what we did is we did a study. This is just east of Chicago. Anybody here from the Chicago area? A few different people. This is Mount Prospect, okay? We took these people who were going into a movie theater in Mount Prospect. What we did is we gave them these huge containers of popcorn. You know, the ones that cost like $14 at the AMC, okay? Then we gave them, the other half of the people, we ended up giving the really huge containers, the Holy Roman Empire sizes. That cost like, $14.05, right? Okay. But now this wasn't normal popcorn, okay? This was popcorn that had been sitting in an sterile entomology lab for 5 days in 60% humidity. This is like rancid styrofoam pellets, okay? Well, here's what happens if you give people fresh popcorn. Okay, they sit down in the theater, they go like this. The person next to them tries to ask them a question. They shake their head and they go, no, can't talk, eating. And one thing we found is that if people arrive at a theater 10 minutes or more before the movie starts and order popcorn, they will eat half of their handfuls of popcorn that they'll eat throughout the entire movie before the credits start, before the movie starts. Okay? But here's what happens if you give people 5-day-old stale popcorn. They go to the movie, they sit down, they take a bite, and they wince because this is so terrible. And they put it down next to them, and they kind of watch the movie for 3 or 4 minutes and kind of go, popcorn. But that continues throughout the entire movie, to the point that by the time that movie's over, they will have eaten 34% more popcorn if you gave them the big thing. Now, at the end of the theater, when they come out of the theater, we'll intercept these people and say, hey, you ate a third more popcorn. That's crazy. Were you really hungry? They go, no, of course I wasn't hungry. We'll go, did it taste really good? No, it was terrible. But if we say, do you think you ate a lot more popcorn because of the size of the bucket? To a person, they'll say, no way, not me. And this ends up being sort of the big problem, is that we get messed up by these cues around us because we end up thinking that we're smarter than the cues around us. We end up thinking that we're smarter than the popcorn bowl. And the crazy thing about this is that even if you look at little kids, like here's a little 3-year-old girl, we even find, even with kids, if you give them a larger cereal bowl at like in daycare as a 4-year-old, they're going to pour about 44% more Captain Crunch in that bowl. Okay, I mean, they don't eat it all because they're 4 years old, right? They eat a little bit more, they spill a little bit more, but these cues even mess them up. It's crazy. But it's not even just the size of the bowl. We did something that's going to be coming out in a short time, but we found that even the color of plates messes us up. Now, what happens is that if you end up serving things that end up being a similar color, like let's say white rice in a white plate, you're going to put on average about 19% more in that white plate than if you serve it on a dark plate, the one that has a high contrast. Because what ends up happening is that this contrast is enough to interrupt you and make you say, whoa, stop. Whereas when it blends into the white, it's almost like camouflage, and you keep going. We find that serving red pasta on a red plate, people end up serving a lot more than when they serve it on a white plate. But these things are all around us, these weird cues that sort of unconsciously mess us up. And we did a study a while back that even looked at drinking glasses. that we found that when people pour liquids, what happens is they measure how much liquid they're pouring by looking at the height of things. So if you vary the width of the glass tremendously, people don't even realize it, because nobody pours going, no, you pour like this. And we found that this biases everybody, that if you give somebody a short wide glass, let's say a tumbler, that's 10 ounces, people will pour more in it than they will a tall, skinny glass that holds the same volume. But now, do you think this would even influence professionals? Who would be a professional pourer? Bartenders. Let's take a look at bartenders here. Shortly after we found this, or shortly after we sort of discovered this, I was giving this talk to a big dietetics conference. It was on something else, but I was really, really excited about this at the time. So I just, again, happened to mention at the very end of the talk, and the very first person to ask a question runs down and grabs a microphone and says, in this like highly dramatic way, like Charlton Heston is being channeled through her or something. She goes, "If even the professionals are fooled by the cues around us, what hope is there for the rest of us?" And I'm like, wow, she must have practiced that. That was great. And, the thing is, it's a lot easier to change your environment than it is to change your mind. Within 2 days of finding out that people poured so much more into short, wide juice glasses than tall, skinny glasses, into short, wide pop glasses than tall, skinny ones, into tumblers and highball glasses, in our lab, we got rid of all the short, wide glasses. Because if some of this short and wide is going to cause you to pour more, I mean, who are we to think that we can kind of say, no, by virtue of my willpower and my focused attention, this shan't happen to me? No, it assuredly will. I mean, even this bartender, about 2 minutes later, we said, let's try it again. The same thing happened. He poured 20% more this next time. I mean, these things end up being really hardwired to us, and the best solution is just to change our environment, not say, great, now that I know it, it won't happen. Well, the second myth that we're going to look at is one related to whether we know when we're full or not. Now, this will give us a chance to pick on the Chicagoans again, but I want to ask you guys to think for a second. How do you know when you're through eating dinner? Just think of last night's dinner, okay? How do you know when you're through eating dinner? No, don't say anything. Well, a while back, I was living in France, and I asked 150 Parisians how they knew they were through eating dinner. And the number one response was, I know I am through eating dinner when I'm no longer full. Okay. The second was, I know I'm through eating dinner when the food no longer tastes good. Okay. Those are both sort of internal cues, like they're using their taste buds in their tummy to say, stop. Well, then I asked, about 6 months later, 150 Chicagoans the same question. Okay. What do you think the number one answer was when I asked Chicagoans, how do you know when you're through eating dinner? That's right. When my plate's empty. In fact, the second response was, I know I'm through eating dinner when the TV show I'm watching is over. Okay. Or the game, I guess. I don't know. Well, and those are both external cues. When we're looking around, we're looking at our plate to tell us whether we're full. We're looking at the TV to tell us whether we're full. And most of these cues around us almost all push us in the wrong direction. So if we end up paying too much attention, we're kind of lost. But anyway, we wanted to see what would happen if your plate never, ever emptied, okay? Would we just keep eating like the family dog until we just exploded, I think that's a myth. I don't know that it actually happens. But it's a great visual, I think. Well, we did this study where we created these refillable soup bowls, and let me show you what these look like. We had this research restaurant that's pretty cool. And one of the things we did was we took soup bowls. This is a real restaurant. We took soup bowls, and we drilled holes in the bottom of the soup bowls, okay? And then we drilled holes through these tables and took food-grade tubing and we went right in the bottom of the bowl, mounted it flush against the bottom, took it underneath the table to these large cauldrons of soup. There's 6 quarts of tomato soup in there, okay? And as this poor person eats, every bite she takes, the level in the soup bowl is going to dutifully drop, okay? But the second she stops, it's going to imperceptibly start to rise again, okay? to the point that she's going to have to eat all 6 quarts of that soup before she ever sees the bottom of that bowl, okay? Now, how many of you, if you're eating from a bottomless soup bowl, would know something was going on? I mean, we all want to think we're smarter than our soup bowl, right? Well, we did this study with about 180 people. And out of the 180 people, guess how many figured something was going on in the 10 minutes the study lasted? 2. So what happened, one guy dropped a napkin and kind of looked under the table. And there's all this Borg-like tubing and stuff. And, ah! And this other guy, I guess forgetting that he wasn't at a medieval Viking feast, picks a soup bowl up like this. And the thing is, this is tomato soup, so it slithers, this tube slithers up out of the table like it's a coral snake, you know? And the person across the table sort of screamed, and one of the guys got up and tipped a chair over, and soup spurting up on the side of his neck, and oh boy, that was a bad moment in research history. Well, here's what the bowl looks like. But what we find is that even though they eat soup just for 10 minutes, and after 10 minutes they get the rest of their lunch, what we found is that the typical person ate 73% more soup in that first 10 minutes if we gave them a bottomless soup bowl. I mean, we had 5 people eat more than a quart. But the thing is, if you asked them if they're full, they'd go, "No, how could it be full? I still have half a bowl of soup left." And the thing is that we eat with our eyes and not with our stomach. I mean, you find this if you have friends who are dietitians or in dietetics. One of the things they'll often tell you is, look, don't eat straight out of the package. If you buy a 5-pound bag of Cheetos, I can't even imagine what the size that would be. If you buy that and just start eating out of the bottom, out of the bag, you're going to eat a whole lot more than if you, at the beginning, pour it into a bowl or plate, note how good or bad of a boy you're going to be, and just take that plate or bowl and just eat out of that. Well, we also find this works with chicken wings. We did some studies at chicken wing, all-you-can-eat chicken wing bars. We find that if you bust the wings versus not bust the wings, not only do people eat 30% more if you bust the wings, because they can't remember how much they ate, but also at the end of the night, if you give them a free, 17,000 calorie skillet cookie, about 90% of the people who had their wings bust go, "Absolutely, I want that." And they're eating it before they get to the car. It's just crazy. If they've seen how many wings they eat, only about 25% of the people take those things. Well, let's look at some solutions for homes and communities. Now, kind of the real easy bottom line is that the secret to mindless eating is not mindful eating, okay? That works very, very well for some percent of people, but for a lot of people, it's not very realistic. To cut the raisin in half and taste the raisin for an hour and a half, or whatever. That can work very well for some people, and it will assuredly improve your appreciation of the taste of raisins. But most of us aren't in that situation. We're coming home from school or work. We're eating very quickly. We got about 17 things on our mind that we need to do. Kids are crying. Your friends are talking to you. We don't really have the luxury to do that as much as we would. And so for us, I think more of the solution to mindless eating is just changing your environment so that you can naturally mindlessly eat less or mindlessly eat better, rather than having to focus on the P, or rather having to focus on must not overpour. No, just get rid of those glasses. You're not going to have it. Now, if your immediate environment causes you to overeat, well, change it. So if your big plates cause you to eat or serve yourself about 22% more, well, use smaller plates. Don't go below about 9.5 inches. That's the size of a paper plate. Because if you do, you pretty much know you're tricking yourself, and so you go back for thirds and ninths and things like that. If big bowls cause you to take more and serve more, well, don't use big bowls, use smaller ones. Wide glasses cause you to pour more milk or pop or whatever. Use narrow glasses. But one of the things we've also found is that, if you look even at in the kitchen, like whether it be a refrigerator or a pantry or cupboards, you're 3 times more likely to take the very first thing you see when you open your pantry or your cupboards or your refrigerator. You're 3 times more likely to take the first thing you see than the 5th thing you see. Okay? And the nice thing to know about that is, great, well then take the healthiest thing you have and make sure it's front and center so that you essentially give it the unfair advantage, not the chocolate-covered Captain Crunch. Well, we wanted to look if we're such mindless eaters, or the mindless eating solutions. And we did this thing that's really kind of cool. For people who came to the mindlesseating.org website, we took 2,000 people who came there wanting to get their families to eat healthier. And what we did is we gave them randomly one of 20 tips about things they could do that might help them out. And they did their tip might be use a smaller bowl, or it might be serve off the counter, things like that. And then what we did is we tracked them for 3 months, and we got self-reported measures of weight loss and stuff like that. And one of the things we ended up finding was that, if you take something like use a smaller plate, on average, the typical person who's giving that as a tip reported losing about 2 pounds a month. Okay? But the thing about this is that when it came to those 2 pounds a month, it wasn't like they lost 2 pounds the first month, 2 pounds the second month, and 2 pounds the third month. The more common pattern, okay, for a lot of these people was they'd lose 1 pound the first month, 2 pounds the second month, and 3 pounds the third month. Now, that didn't really make much sense. That's kind of strange. And we didn't know what the answer was until about 4 or 5 months later. I was given a talk, and this was in Denver. And after the talk, they had this really nice reception. And this guy and his wife came up, and she's a dietitian. And they said, oh, yeah, man, about a year ago or 11 months ago, we made one little change in our life, and I lost 32 pounds, and he lost 45 pounds. And the change we made is that we never sit down to lunch or dinner unless there's both a fruit and a vegetable on the table. Okay. Now, we don't have to eat either of them. Okay. They just have to be sitting on the table. Okay. Like it could be a banana from September. It counts. Okay. So I said, wow, that's crazy. And if you think about that, there's a ton of reasons why you can imagine that eventually people would start losing a little bit of weight. There's more options there that are lower calorie density. There's more opportunity to eat a little bit better than a little bit worse. There's a bunch of reasons that could work. But I asked her, I said, so why do you think your husband lost 40, even more weight? And she goes, well, after a couple months, he kind of figured out, he started feeling very encouraged that things were going in the right direction. So what he did is he started making other changes. Like, for instance, instead of drinking beer, he drinks red wine. And I said, and why would that make you lose less weight? And she goes, he doesn't like red wine. Fair enough. And then something else happened that I thought was kind of interesting. At the same time, I was given a series of talks through North Dakota, and there's a nice place there. And it was kind of a late night, kind of about this time. And things were over, and there's a guy standing way, way back in the corner, and this is sort of kind of a sloped auditorium. For the whole night, he was standing up, way, way, way in the back. And at the end, I was kind of talking with my host, and he walks down, but his coat's been buttoned the entire time. And he walks down, and he says, I've been waiting all night to show you something. And, I'm going to myself, oh, please let it be a gun. And anyway, he opens his coat and he goes, look at the sweater. He says, this sweater was skin tight on me 7 months ago. I lost 34 pounds in 7 months. And the only change I made was I eat cottage cheese when I get home from work. and I said, well, how does that help? He goes, oh, well, he says, I used to come home from work. We'd have dinner at 6 o'clock. I'd be hungry by about 9, so I'd eat a snack before bed. But he said, because I eat cottage cheese, we don't have dinner till about 7:30, and I don't have a nighttime snack because I'm tired before I get hungry. Oh. And I said, that's really cool. But I said, geez, I can't believe you could lose 5 pounds a month just by not eating a nighttime snack. That's really beyond what I can imagine. And he goes, yeah, this started working so well, though. I started feeling encouraged that after a couple months, what I did is I added another change. We just stopped eating dessert on weekdays. We just ate it on weekends. And the neat thing about both of these examples, and I've heard like tons more like this, is what it points to is not the idea that a person goes on some big transformative, life-changing experience, but that they do one thing that they do consistently every single day, and something about this very gradual movement or change that they see that's encouraging causes them to become inspired to add another thing. Okay? Just like, I know some of you are in exercise physiology. If you say, the first thing we're going to do to get you back in shape is you're going to go to the gym for 90 minutes and you're going to do some big cardio every night when you get back. That's going to last one day, right? But if you were to say just every night, it would just be really, really neat if you walked around your block once. If a person diligently did that for a month, after, I would guess, not much longer than a month, they'd start inventing something else they wanted to do because they were encouraged with the results. Well, if anybody's interested in this sort of stuff about obesity and weight and stuff, it can be pretty depressing to watch TV or hear people talk because, you watch movies or TV shows like The Biggest Loser, and you start thinking that the world is filled with 600-pound people, and the life is just turning dismal. One of the things we did a cool study that a short time ago, and we took 2,500 people, and these were mothers with kids at home, and we asked them, how much weight would you have to lose to be happy with your body? Okay. And interestingly enough, it wasn't people saying, if only I could lose that last 200 pounds, I'd be a new person. No. 4 out of 5 people said that on average, they'd be happy if they just lost 18 pounds. And that's really doable. I mean, that's about 1.5 pounds a month. I mean, if you want to lose 18 pounds before your high school reunion next weekend, that's going to be tough. But over the course of a year, that's really easy to do simply by making some of these small changes around the house. Well, the last thing I want to talk about is about taking some of this stuff and changing schools. I don't know if you follow anything about school lunch things that are going on. There's been all sorts of legislation to try to make school lunches like extremely different. And the idea that if all we have are escarole and tofu, kids will eat healthier. Now, I don't know about you guys when you went to high school, but I know when I was in high school out at Sioux City East, if all these served us escarole and tofu, that would have been sack lunch day for the rest of the school year for me. Well, we started something called the Smarter Lunchroom Movement. And this kind of happened a few years ago. I got a call from the New York State Department of Health, and they said, hey, we're doing this really cool grant system up in northern New York. This is like Plattsburgh and Saranac and Lake Placid. This is like Antarctica, actually. It's just way up there. It's unbelievable. And they said, we're going to give all these schools $4,000 so that they can increase fruit sales by 5% in their school. And they said, how much do we need to drop the price of a 50-cent apple or peach or pear or banana so that kids buy 5% more? Now, if you look back and remember what your school lunch was like, I mean, this is what they're like up there, okay? If you want an apple, the apple is in like this nasty metal chafer bin, under the sneeze shield in the darkest part of that line. If you wanted that, you'd have to go and like contort yourself, get an apple, and it's not 5 cents is going to make any difference. We said, no, let's do this. Just take your fruit, put it in a nice bowl, and put it in a well-lit part of the line. Okay. And so 5 schools did that, and sales went up, not 5%, but they went up 103%. Okay. And one school, and it was kind of interesting, we got all this stuff set up, and then every month we'd have a conference call with these food service directors, kind of seeing how things are going and stuff. And the first month, one school missed the first month, so at the end of the second month, they called up, and we're checking in on everybody. And we're all sitting around kind of a conference table with a speakerphone on, and the people in my lab are really nice, really fun people. And we said, hey, we didn't get to talk to you last month. How are things going this month? And the person goes, yeah, I don't really think we got the directions right. And I'm like, nice bowl, well-lit place. What could have gone wrong? And the person goes, well, we put in a nice bowl, but then we got a desk lamp out of the closet that we weren't using. Yeah, and we put it right in front of it and turned it on. and we hear this, and we're biting our fingernails, and finally we had to put the thing on mute because people were kind of laughing. And then we took it back off mute, and I said, oh, I see it. What happened? And she goes, oh, sales went up 186%. So I'm like, okay, change instructions. Put a nice bowl with a desk lamp. 2 schools said, no, we're not going to do it because it won't work. And so their sales went up 0%. Another example is this Corning Middle School. And this was a middle school that it had a salad bar. And I don't know if you remember the salad bars when you were in high school, but, they're kind of more like little composters on wheels, And so this place, and it was only about 60 miles away from where we're at, and they called and they said, so we need to know, what do we do? Do we add more stuff? We want people to take more salad. Do we decrease the price, or do we just add more stuff to it? Like those little corns, those little corn things that Barbie would eat and stuff. And we took a look at it, and here's what it looks like. In this junior year, you walk in the door up there. Okay, there's a la carte items, there's sale, hot lunch lines here, 2 cash registers. And this poor salad bar, beleaguered salad bar with the 3 items on it is over in this corner. And we said, before you try adding anything or changing the price, why don't we do this? And it took about 40 seconds to move it right there. Salad bar sales went up 200 to 300%. I mean, just 2 weeks. So what happens is that, you get some kid he's never eaten salad in his life. He gets pizza every single day. He's got his pizza. He's going to go pay for it. He bumps in the salad bar. And he's thinking which direction to go. He commits to going right, and, he pays for it. But after about 2 or 3 weeks, maybe he bumps into it and, picks up a little baby corn or something. Okay? But the thing is about this, it led us to so we could probably do better to selling stuff and naming things hearty vegetable soup, clam chowder, hamburger, large hot dog, grilled chicken roll. We could probably do a lot better when it comes to getting kids to eat things. And it raises the question, how can you do a makeover for school? How can you change a school for less than $50 that would get kids to eat more of the good stuff, less of the bad stuff, but then overall get more kids to eat lunch there? And we started this thing, Smarter Lunchroom Movement, last year. And this was an op-ed piece we had. But we showed, look, these are all these studies of psychology and behavioral economics that show how you can get kids to eat a little bit better without outlawing the chocolate chip cookie. Okay? What we show is that, look, if you have 3 vegetables in a row, whatever vegetable you have first, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be okra, okay, or lima beans, kale even. It doesn't matter what it is. Whatever's first in line, people are 11% more likely to take than whatever's third. So simply by shifting the order that they see things ends up having a modest but still significant effect on what people get. we ended up finding that giving things like really, really neat names, giving them cool names, they don't even have to be neat. They can even be dorky names. Calling something power peas instead of peas. Or calling something crispy green beans instead of just green beans. Ended up increasing sales by about 27%. I'm not really sure that works with hearty vegetable soup. Right, because we didn't know what it was selling before, but there's all these little things that can be done in schools that are very easy. In fact, what we did is we worked with the USDA to change some of their guidelines for the U.S. Healthier Schools. We'd say, look, there's 5 things that schools want to do to get kids to eat healthier. They want them to eat more fruit. Well, here's 3 things that research has shown us work, getting kids to eat more fruit, changing the order, things like this. Eat more vegetables, drink more white milk instead of pop and stuff like that. Eat more of a targeted healthy entree, and then eat better in other ways. So we gave them 3 suggestions, and we've implemented these in a whole bunch of different contexts, in over 3,000 schools just last year alone. But I'll give you an example of when MTV came and watched us do a renovation here. I don't know. And the fact that all these decisions that are made in cafeterias are very, very mindless at their very root means that people can be budged and nudged in ways that can help them eat a lot healthier. Well, I mean, even Springfield's Quickie Mart can get in on the action here. Okay, Homer says, "Duh, the donuts are way over there. I think I'll have the fruit instead." And Apu says, my cunning choice architecture will have Homer eating healthy. So this is very applicable across a lot of different contexts. We're hoping to move this out to 30,000 different schools by the end of 2015. Our target was 3,000 by the end of 2011. Done. 10,000 by the end of 2012. And we're almost there right now. And then moving it. And one of the things we're doing for people who are interested is we're enlisting people across the country to come in, and we train them how to go in and diagnose what's going wrong in a school, prescribe the easy, low-cost, no-cost changes that can make kids eat healthier, and then implement and evaluate them. And if you're interested in doing this, we've got a trainer program that's free to you, and you can join that if you want to. You look at the website smarterlunchrooms.org. Well, in conclusion, I'm going to turn this back to you in just a second. But one of the things that makes me very proud to be here at Iowa State, other than when I was growing up in Sioux City, what would happen is they said, if you're really smart and you're really good at math, you go to Iowa State and study engineering. Otherwise, you go to another school. I said, it's very good to be here. But what I really like about Iowa State and why it's always been in my heart is the same reason that the University of Illinois has been in my heart, Cornell, even Michigan State. It's because these are in Missouri. Because every state has a land-grant school that has an extension mission. Sort of a mission to sort of take research, take the stuff that you're learning in the classroom, and make it real for people out in the state of Iowa and in other states to help make their lives better. So that even if they weren't able as people to come here to the university, they can still benefit by what we learn. And having that mandate to be translational in the research we do and what we learn makes me very, very proud to be here at Iowa State and for me to be at a land-grant school right now also. Well, back to you. What should you impulse buy next time you go to the Pottery Barn? Okay, yeah, it's pretty bold. Small plates, what color should they be? Probably dark, okay, because most carbohydrates we overeat are white. How do you want to eat Ben & Jerry's ice cream? You're going to want to stand in front of the freezer when nobody's looking, a little light off the side, and eat it out of the carton? Now, what would be the better way to do that? Yeah, dish in that bowl so you know how bad of a boy or girl you're going to be at that moment, okay? And what do you want to put in your home counter? Fruit bowl. Yeah, put it in your apartment. You can even have one in your dorm room. I mean, the thing is, it's not going to influence how much fruit you eat for the first 2 weeks. For the first 2 weeks, what we find is people just stare at the fruit bowl and go, how did that get here? But after about 2 weeks, we find people start eating a lot more fruit. It's an easily mindless solution to mindlessly eating poorly. Okay? Thank you very, very much for inviting me.
we're going to have questions. Brian's gonna
Yeah, we've got a few
questions.
minutes
I'm
for
gonna put the
questions if people have
microphone
any
over here.
questions. It can be about anything. Carter. Carter from Denison, Iowa.
Cool. How's it going, Brian?
Good, thanks.
Do you want me to stand? I don't know.
You're fine.
Kind of tired of sitting, I guess. So what made you, what triggered you to start this experiment?
Well, it's a really good question. You ask, what triggered me to start this experiment? So I went to school in Sioux City, but I was raised on the farm, spent all my summers on the farm in Correctionville, Iowa. And when I was there, I would sell vegetables door to door in town. And, you know, and it's kind of crazy. You have a wagon full of tomatoes, and one person would buy everything you had, and the next person right next to them would kind of look at you like you were selling kryptonite. And it got me really interested in why do we make these decisions about food? Because the smartest person you know, you think of the smartest person you know in your dorm or in your graduate program, if you were to ask them why they ate what they ate tonight, they would not be able to answer that. I mean, they'd stutter out something like, well, as you know, I weighed some alternatives and basically just picked what I wanted. But at the heart of it, most people, even the smartest people we know, don't put enough thinking into why they eat things. So that's why I really like this area.
Hi.
So tell me your name and where you're from, please.
I'm Diana. I'm from Minnesota, Twin Cities area. I'm a graduate student here in nutritional science. My area of study is with pregnancy, and one of the main issues we look at is just excessive gestational weight gain during pregnancy. I'm just kind of curious if you've ever thought of using mindless eating as an intervention to prevent things like excessive gestational weight gain.
You know, that's a good question, and there's something in this area that I think is really neat too, and I think it relates also to. I mean, there's misconceptions, the idea that you need to be eating for 2 and how many calories you really, really need. But something that's really neat for people who are pregnant is that a study was done. We didn't do the study, somebody else did it. What they did is they took women in the 3rd trimester, and what they did is they gave them either water to drink every day or they gave them carrot juice to drink every day, a cup of carrot juice. And what they did is then they had their babies, and when their babies were about 4 months old, they gave the babies little porridge. And it was either they gave them carrot-flavored porridge. And if the baby came from a mother who had drank carrot juice every day for her 3rd trimester, they ate significantly more carrot-flavored porridge than the babies who didn't. So it seems like there's even important things in vitro that happen with kids that can lead them to be more or less predisposed toward different flavors. And so I think if you're working with mothers, not as a researcher, but also as a clinician or as an advisor, letting them know that they're eating for 2, maybe not calorie-wise, but also in terms of what they eat. It's a very good question.
My name's Nathan. I'm from Wisconsin. I was curious if you'd used any of the negative cues in a positive light, like putting big bowls out in front of the salad bar instead of smaller bowls.
Nathan, an excellent question. His question was, do we ever use these cues in a reverse way? We've done this in 2 really important ways. One of them is we've used this with retirement homes, with homes where older people live, because a lot of their problems are that they don't eat enough. And what we've done is we've changed bowl and plate sizes there. We've changed glass shapes. We've organized things in different ways to get them toward eating more calories versus less calories. But what's also interesting is we started something called this National Mindless Eating Challenge, where people can come to a website. There's a free website. They get to answer a bunch of questions. And based on their answers, we'd give them tips that were statistically correlated with weight loss or weight gain or whatever. But the crazy thing to us is, we think that everybody in the world probably wants to lose weight or eat healthier. About 11% of the people who came to this website were people whose goal was to eat more. And there were 2 groups of people. They were boys 14 to 18, small group, and women or girls 16 to 26, who I think we're struggling with another issue. And we've gotten letters from people that they do the reverse of a lot of things that mention mindless eating, to try to trick themselves into eating a little bit more after they've really tried to condition themselves for 3 or 4 more years to not give themselves what they need. It's a great question.
Hi, I'm Erin Peterson. I'm a psychologist on campus, and I love your research. I'm just geeking out on it, but
you make me feel so geeky when you say that. Thank you.
Oh, I heard what you said about why eat mindfully when we can just stop eating mindlessly, and but I also heard you comment on the people from Paris that I would say probably were eating mindfully in terms of noticing their body's signals and the pleasure of the food. And I'm curious about Americans' enjoyment of food. I think is not there because we don't eat as mindfully. So I'm just curious if you can speak a little to that. If we're able to do some of the things that you're recommending, what might be additional things to really enjoy our food in a way that's more mindful?
Yeah. I mean, nothing helps you enjoy food more than eating it really slowly and focusing on it. And even like, if you've ever taken like a wine class, most people's idea of a wine tasting is you just fill up the glass, I drink it till it's gone, that sort of thing. But if you ever take a wine class, they'll say, well, notice the bouquet, they're like, fruity yet unpretentious, or whatever. and initially we go, we try to stifle a laugh. But once you try tasting things, looking for those different elements, it's amazing how much more you like wine a lot. And I think the same thing happens if you're with somebody and you try describing the food you're eating, the taste of food, even if it's terrible food. It's like the more you talk about a movie, the more you mysteriously find yourself liking the movie even if you hate it to begin with. It's the same thing about food. It starts bringing out subtleties that we don't see. I think one of the tragedies of the United States is that we've never seen food in any way other than simply functional. It's usually something we eat so that we can get fueled up to go do something else. And that's really, really hard to reverse. But we've been working with some people with their kids to try to get their kids to appreciate food more by having their kids try to describe what the food is. And we find promising, not ragingly great results, but kind of promising results that if you get the kids to try to describe the taste of things and what they like about them, that we think it's going to make them appreciate food and be a little bit more naturally mindful. It's an excellent question. Thank you, Erica. I appreciate that.
Hi, I'm Amy Welch. I'm a professor in the Department of Kinesiology. Actually, my area is the psychology of physical activity, so
excellent.
I'm geeking out a bit as well. I'm always interested in individual variability, and I, particularly with your studies where you've got the different bowl sizes and plate sizes, and people tend, on average, to choose more when they have the smaller bowl. Did you look at all at individual variability, and do you know of any variables that might explain variability? Even something, I was just thinking, well, maybe obesity status would moderate the impact of the food size, how much food you eat when you've got that larger bowl.
Outstanding question. I'll tell you the kind of one kind of easier answer. Then, since you mentioned geekiness, and I'll tell you a geekier answer. Okay. So the easier answer is that when we've done stuff with kids, we find that almost all kids will, let's say, serve more in a big bowl, whether this is cereal, than a smaller bowl. But the kids who are most likely to do this aren't the real heavy kids, which we might think initially, but who they are, they're the kids who are rated by their teachers as being more extroverted. So for some reason, extroverts, much more than introverts, are much more exaggeratedly influenced by these. Now, there's a geekier answer is there's something called functional fixedness, and it's sort of like one indicator of whether you have functional fixedness is whether you can find Waldo easily or not. Okay, if you're the kind of person who can find Waldo very easily, there's a scale for this. So it's not like the Waldo scale. But if you're a person who doesn't get caught up in the figure ground stuff, but you can, like, for instance, in those things where it says, can you find, like, the hammer in the tree, or can you find Waldo in the crowd? If you're the kind of person who can find that very easily, you also seem to be less biased by this than the people who kind of go, I think there's a mistake on this page because he's not here. And that ends up being another dimension. And we have a scale on this that we've been using and experimenting with, and we can talk more about that, and I can give you that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm short, so I will get on my tippy toes. I'm Carolyn from Ames, and I was just curious with some of the cafeteria changes that you made. Have you done any checkup or any longitudinal studies on how long that lasted, or if the percentage stayed about the same as the increases?
It's an outstanding question, Carolyn. No, we've never done anything for more than a semester, because typically we do stuff in the fall, we implement it in the spring, then they put it in place next year, and we go on to another school. But I think we can probably do things over time. It's just that when there's a change out from year to year, other variations happen too, and so we've just studied things for about 3.5 months at a time. That's a great suggestion. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name's Leah Rodewald. I'm from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and I'm a student in dietetics here. And I noticed online that it said you did stuff with 100-calorie packs and all that stuff. And I was wondering, what are your views on, like, family size, value size? Should we just, like, descale or scale back the costs along with packaging, or is it just like a scheme to make more money, that kind of thing, I guess? Or if it's a good idea, bad idea?
Excellent question. I'm a big believer in the 100-calorie packs, and our research back in the mid-'90s showed that for 70% of the people who used them, they ate less. 30% ate about the same or a little bit more, but they worked for a whole lot of people. But the view on value packs and family packs is I hear people say, we should outlaw those value packs. And in reality, what you're just seeing is we need to make everybody pay more for food, because there's a lot of, let's say, large families, there's a lot of people out there who benefit for those. But there's also very smart ways to use those. If you buy a family pack, you buy a large pack, and you break it into smaller baggies, you end up putting it in Tupperware, you don't have the predisposition to overeat that you otherwise would, and you still get that savings. Thank you very much for that question.
Brian, thank you very much for coming here and talking to us today, and thank you for your participation here. There are books for sale just on the left side of the room, and Brian will be happy to sign and chat if you stick around. There's refreshments at the back of the room as well. Thank you.